Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Music Through Time, where we talk about music and history. We're your hosts,
Nicole.
Diya.
Veronika, Lleshi.
And Manraj.
Today we'll be talking about African American history in musical theater. Stay tuned and enjoy.
Since we will be talking about musical theater today, I just wanted to briefly appreciate theater as a worldwide phenomenon where people can come together and see something that brought them joy. Let's take it back to the 1960s for this, where there was an emergence of the Black Power movement. It was a movement that emphasized racial pride, economic empowerment, and the creation of political and cultural institutions. During this era, there was a rise in the demand for Black history courses, there was a greater embrace of African culture, and there was a spread of raw artistic expression displaying the realities of African Americans. This movement led to not only the hardships, but the joys of Black life to be celebrated and embraced. Issues of race were finally being discussed, and it was being exposed for what it was. Companies wanted to have diversity in their theater productions, and it was common to want to keep minstrel shows going with the humor and insensitivity because it was already known. But people were finally ready for something new. They were ready for a revival of Black musical theater. This is what gave them a space to demonstrate their own talent, and by the 1970s, we got to see more Black cast productions. We also got to see rock on Broadway productions, and we were finally heading in the right direction. And this is where we get to see The Wiz in 1975, which Diya will discuss.
Thanks, Nicole. The Wiz is a 1975 Broadway play that offers a twist to the traditional story of The Wizard of Oz by alluding to the Black experience. According to Sam O'Connell in the Routledge Companion to African American Theater and Performance, Black music is thought to be vocalizing Black history, experiences, and roots in the African diaspora. Sandra Richards comments on this by sharing how many stories that allude to the African diaspora have a return narrative as depicted in The Wiz. A modern descendant of slaves, in this case Dorothy, goes to an African area, Oz, and feels overwhelmed and discombobulated by their unfamiliarity with the place, yet connected to the people that welcome them there. Once they become accustomed to the sense of home, they are then self-assured and prepared to face struggles in another home in America or Europe. Yet, as Rushdie comments, The Wiz portrays how there is no place as home is a place either made for us or a place we determine for ourselves. Now, let's hear from Veronika about lower points in musical theater for Black people.
Thanks, Dad. It's interesting to note during the post-war America, Black stories were being told just by white musical playwrights and artists. Let's look at Carmen Jones for instance. This play did feature a Black lead in both Muriel Smith and Muriel Ron, and it did focus on the African American community following the war. But it was basically a white-led project with Robert Russell Bennett interpreting the pieces and Oscar Hammerstein II from the Rodgers and Hammerstein duo doing everything else, according to Jeff Smith in Black Faces, White Voices, The Politics of Dubbing and Carmen Jones. This is a blatant example of whitewashing because it's supposed to be Black art and talking about the Black experience, but it's written from a white perspective. And this is just one instance of many. Like, if you look at art and classical music, it's been whitewashed to the point where people remember the name of white composers before they remember the name of William Grant Still. Jazz is also whitewashed because 50s artists like George Gershwin were able to hide the genre's roots in the Black community. Same thing with rock and its blues roots. So now let's go back and honor Black created musicals in honor of musical theater with Manraj.
Thanks, Veronika. As we've learned, in the years following the Civil War, Black roles in musicals or minstrel shows were performed by white actors, with a very few rare exceptions. Since minstrel shows were the only stage outlet available to African American performers, it is no surprise that the earliest Black musicals grew out of these minstrels. In 1898, Black composer and lyricist Bob Cole set up his own all-Black production company where he composed and produced the musical A Trip to Coontown. This was the first full-length New York musical written, directed, and performed exclusively by African Americans, which was an astounding achievement in an era where very few independent theaters could even consider taking a chance on such a production. The title of the musical, which would now be considered offensive, pointed to its minstrel influence, which catered to a white-only audience. The musical used minstrel stereotypes to tell the story of a con artist as he attempts to steal an old man's pension. At the same time, it also challenged certain stereotypes since it had Cole playing a homeless person in white-face makeup and returning in one scene with chicken, both of which were stereotypes associated with African Americans in minstrel shows.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you guys had a fun time listening. Tune in next week for more.